flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Superintendent, could you confirm the posting?
All postings are posted in the appropriate places, including the SAU, town offices, and schools.
Thank you. Okay, in recording the roll present. Bridgewater, here. Bristol,
Here.
Groton,
Yes.
and Newhampton.
Yes.
Thank you. I declare we have a quorum. We're now at item 4 on our agenda, which is a non-public session that has been scheduled under RSA 91A, Section 3, subparagraph Roman numeral 2, item C. Is there a motion to go into non-public?
So.
Moved by Ben,
I'll second.
seconded by Christine. I will call the roll.
Chair, for process, we probably want to ask the parent if she wants to go into non-public, just for the record.
Oh, you want to do that in public?
Yes, you should do it in public, just to confirm that she wants to go into non-public for the hearing.
I was going to do that in the non-public session. Mrs. Lane, for the record, have you requested that student hearing that's scheduled for this evening to be held in public session or non-public?
Non-public.
Thank you very much. Okay, the non-public session is about to be confirmed by roll call vote. I believe we did.
No, we haven't.
Okay. Bridgewater, yes. Bristol,
Yes.
Groton,
Yes.
Newhampton. Okay. It is unanimous for those present. Okay, we will go into non-public at 6:00.
Yes.
It's like 80 in there during the day.
No, it's never right.
Right.
Okay, we have decided to come back into public session at about 8 o'clock. And at this point in time, having completed our non-public session, I would like to entertain a motion relative to sealing of the minutes of that non-public session.
I would move to seal the minutes of the non-public.
Okay, a motion is being made by Sue Cheney.
Second.
Purposes of sealing the minutes, and has been seconded by Jeff.
Do you want to make a time limit on how long you would like to seal them? Well, there should be a time frame attached to that.
Yeah, we're gonna go with 50 years. Is that amenable to you?
That's, yes.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call a vote. All those in favor of sealing the minutes for a 50-year period, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote is 6-0-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda, which is Roman numeral 5, which is approval or modification of the agenda. Is there any desire to change the agenda as it stands?
I would like to ask if it would be possible to move up the project promise presentation, just so Autumn doesn't have to stay for the whole meeting.
Sounds reasonable to me. Any objection? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do that. When would you like to cover that?
Maybe you do that after announcements and recognition. Old business.
Okay. Project promise Okay, we're now at item 6, which is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any comments, questions, issues? Otherwise, with respect to the minutes, the meeting of Monday, January 12th. Okay, I don't hear any. Is there a motion?
I have one.
Oh, Sue?
It's just a small thing, under announcements and recognition,
Yes.
number 7, the first line of A, just add to, P-O, after paying. This elementary school paying to middle school. The first line of A. PBIS is positive behavioral intervention and support, right?
Yes.
It's just backwards.
Anything else?
I think that's. Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as modified?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Sue, seconded by Christine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 6-0-0. Okay, that now brings us to item 7, which is public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 8A, which is announcements and recognition.
So I can report out for our student and staff, because they both left.
Staff liaison.
Yeah, and for myself, so just a couple of things. We had both open houses for Hill. The last 2 weeks, they were very well attended. I want to thank the board members for coming. I want to thank Mike and Eric for pulling them together. I thought they were very well done. I think the people who were there appreciated the information we gave them. As emailed the board if you need a copy of the School Boards Association Scholarship Program, if you have kids or grandkids who are eligible. Again, another great opportunity for some money. Mimi did want to mention, last week we had a PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention in Sports, kind of rollout assembly, which was very well done and very well attended. The kids did an excellent job. There's a picture on our website of it. It was the rollout, it was the kind of midpoint assessment for their hallway behavior rollout. So one of the things they're working on is improving hallway behavior. And so they were meeting their goal, and so they had assembly. Kids bought t-shirts, and so it was just really well. It was nice. It was nice to see the whole school kind of get on the same page, and Bristol Elementary School had their assembly as well. I think I think the staff are really supporting both of those initiatives in the sense of it's getting them both on the same page, all of the teachers on the same page, administration, and the kids are really loving it, so it's really a great community thing. And we've just been dealing with the weather. It's been nonstop. It's supposed to get 1 to 3 inches tomorrow, so I'm not setting my alarm for 5, so hopefully we'll be fine.
Anyone else have announcements? Make? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, that will bring us to item 8B, which is Project Promise.
So this is kind of a two-part piece, so I asked Autumn, since she's been here for 3/4 of a year now, just to kind of an update on kind of what she's been working on and how Project Promise is going. And then for the board to kind of begin the conversation around sustainability. And really, where does the board see this? Right now, we have about $150,000 in the budget for Project Promise. And at the end of the day, where does the board see does the board see continuing that contribution, not continuing that contribution? Like where does the board stand so we can start to think about the sustainability piece of that program and what we need to do? And so that may be an ongoing conversation. But we wanted to start to put that out there because that is a significant dollar amount that if it isn't supported by the district, that we'll need to look at how that is supported through other funds or other resources to continue.
Hopefully. Mike's computer. Just a brief presentation. So here, obviously, you guys know Project Promise, 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant program, but also funded through the district. And this photo here is from our Lights On celebration that we had in the fall. And I'm kind of going to be going through some of the highlights as Stacy had mentioned, and then kind of bringing up some questions too. So the first thing I thought that you guys would like to see is sort of our attendance. So it has the daily average attendance for each site, as well as total unduplicated students, so meaning the amount of total students we've served. And so overall through the district, on a daily basis, we're seeing around 125 students each day. And then we've seen 441 students throughout the year. And a lot of those unduplicated students, as you can see, come more from the high school and middle school programs. And that's because the student may come in if they just have homework on one day. And also part of that is also with partnering with the TTCC teen night and things like that. So we're seeing just a broader range of students. So some of the highlights that I've kind of been working on throughout since July. So we've got a lot of new partnerships going. We have actually several new partnerships with PSU. When I started off and came, I think, to the meeting in August, I talked about wanting to get some work study students in our sites. And currently we have at least one work study student at all 6 sites, and some of the sites have more. The great thing about the work study site students is that this is a very sustainable practice because through PSU they have a America Reads grant, which covers the PSU students' commute time and the time that they're working on students with homework or academics. And so then out of our grant funds, we're having to pay, I believe it's 24% of $7.75 per hour for those other times. And so approximately last semester we had less students, and we've kind of built that relationship. But to have a student come out twice a week and be in our program for the entire time was less than $100 for the entire semester. So it's a really sustainable practice. I've also met with a person who is in charge of the social work program, and we're looking to get some of the social work students to be able to do their internships with Project Promise, which would equal around 450 hours in the spring semester of next year. And we're also a mentor site for a service learning class through PSU, and a site for more of an introductory class for social work students. I'm trying to think. Oh, and also with PSU, we've partnered with their theater department, and I'll talk a little bit more about that because we've got a small grant to incorporate some theater programs. The other partnerships that we've kind of been working on is with the University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension, and so based on the free and reduced lunch numbers at Bristol Elementary School, they're eligible for a program called Cooking Matters, where someone from UNH Cooperative Extension comes in, provides all of the materials, and leads cooking classes with students. And she did one club session, I believe, before winter break, and is going to be starting one coming up. And we've also they have a lot of curriculum through their 4-H, and so a couple sites have connected to get that curriculum and those supplies. We've also connected with the local libraries. So in New Hampton, Shelley Doucette, the site coordinator, has connected with the children's library there. And young students, I believe it was the 4th and 5th graders, were going over there in the fall. And then once the weather is getting warmer, the younger kids are going to go back over there. And there's a new director down at the Bristol Library. And we've met several times, and they've just got a new children's librarian in place. And so they were out at our Lights On family event, but they're also hoping to have students from the middle school and from the BES program be able to do some programming either at the library or have the librarian come in. And then another partnership also is with AmeriCorps. I'm just in the process of finished up one application to be able to get a AmeriCorps Vista member to be able to come in. And for those of you who aren't familiar with AmeriCorps Vista, that's basically somebody who would have a 12-month kind of contract to our district or out of grant funds, would cost $5,000 for them to be in our programs and helping out with the Vista in particular is a lot about capacity building. We'd be doing volunteer recruitment, kind of working on some of these relationships, and for 40 hours a week. And then we've also applied for an additional AmeriCorps member that wouldn't start until fall of next year, and they would be more working with students, and they're doing it, if we get it, that one we won't find out until May, but it's a mentoring program where they would mentor high school students and then would really be able to link in with that homework academic piece after school at the high school. So a lot of partnership and a lot of meetings kind of going on to sort of be able to build these sustainable pieces for the after school program. Another highlight is that we have a new billing system in place, which has streamlined our billing. And I believe that all parents are now getting a bill each month by the 10th, and payments are due by the 25th. And if they aren't, Susan Severance has been working really hard to contact parents to be able to either fill out scholarship forms, work out payment plans, get them to apply to free and reduced lunch and all of those things. And so I think that by using an electronic system, a lot of it before was paper and pencil, has really helped to kind of streamline that. Another highlight is we got a mini grant from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation for $5,000, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's been able for us, or it's allowed us to be able to partner with Plymouth State's theater department. And so we were able to send approximately 20 students to the Children's Arts Festival at Plymouth State, and they were able to have a whole day there. Leah McDevitt was actually one of the chaperones for the day. And it was a great experience for the kids, and that sort of kicked off thinking about theater. And today I just went around with two of the professional PSU Tiger cast members to two of our sites, and they're going to two more. And they're doing theater games with the students, and then starting after February break, we'll be able to have theater clubs at all of our elementary sites with a community arts gala, large-scale family event where the kids will showcase what they did on April 23rd at Bridgewater. And then we also got another kind of smaller grant, the Children's Literacy Foundation. The value is around $3,000. Bristol Elementary School will get $2,000 worth of books for their after-school library, which is great because we do assisting in silent reading, and some of the books that they have for after school have seen their better days. And then we have a storytelling event that's actually happening this Thursday at Bristol Elementary, and we're having all of the students be able to attend it from all of the elementary after-school sites with a family dinner afterwards for those families who want to pick up their kids from BES. And then the last kind of highlight that I've been working on is we've been sort of forming an advisory board, and it's been a slow start, but we're trying to basically get more community input. And one thing that we've kind of talked about with this group is potentially kind of doing some focus groups at different sites. And that's part of the reason also why I wanted to present to you guys, because that'll help sort of shape what I'm talking and asking parents and students and things like that. So kind of getting now to the funding. So you can see this kind of breaks down our funding sources, and it's we have two different grants. So there's one for New Hampton Community School, and then one for the what I call large grant, which covers the 5 other sites. So New Hampton Community School this year, which it will have a reduction in funds next year, was $64,404.63. And next year, it'll be around 50-ish thousand. That's not an exact figure. And then out of tuition and fees, after having kind of the new tuition rate, we've been able to kind of predict a little bit more accurately what we think we'll collect through the year. And so from New Hampton, we believe that we'll collect around $16,000. And then at New Hampton, the school district itself contributes $13,585.39 approximately. And that's mostly coming from my salary and from benefits, FICA and retirement from Susan Severance and myself. So the director and assistant director positions. Out of the large grant, it's larger, but it covers more sites, is $259,000 approximately. And out of tuition and fees, we're expecting to collect around a little bit more than $30,000. And then out of the district, currently contributes $147,533 and some change, and that is including the rest of the director's salary. Some of that also comes out of the grant. All of FICA and retirement for all of our staff, and also transportation. And then sort of the little mini grants that we've gotten this year. So sort of our total budget is $539,378.83. We don't want to forget those. And so this, I kind of broke it down a little bit further, so not looking at the two separate grants, because for me, I don't know, I kind of, although it's separate and we don't mix those funds as far as the grant funds, I think thinking about the program as a whole is important. And so you can see that when we look at it that way, the 21st Century funding is funding approximately 2/3 of the program, or 60% of the programs. Tuition and fees plus these mini grants is approximately 10%. And right now, the Newfound Area School District is around 30%, so a little bit less than 1/3. And so, as I said, what those contributions go towards are towards my salary, the cost of the late bus, or a portion of the cost of the late bus, a portion of FICA and retirement, and then the benefits for the director and the assistant director. And so in these conversations I've been having with people around sustainability, one thought is that, you know, I guess my question is, could these funds be reallocated to those most essential program needs? And if they could, then that's where I would then sort of start those focus groups with families and finding out what is the most essential part. Because kind of going back to here, if you look at the Newfound Area School District contributions right now, it's around $160,000. And I definitely think that there are some sustainable pieces that we could put into programs so that if we didn't get grant funds, that we're not looking at, all right, there's nothing for kids. And right now, I feel like with it being a part of FICA and retirement, because it's somewhat hidden in a certain sense or not as a parent, it makes it, I think, easier to sort of forget about. And at the end of, you know, the grant, so New Hampton will be reapplying next year, the last year of that grant, and there's 3 more years on the large grant. But that said, right now, in the Senate and in the House, there are both bills to stop funds towards 21st century funding. And so if those bills pass at any point, you know, we could potentially be out of funding from that portion. So I think it's really important, especially now as the political landscape is changing, to think about, you know, could we be sustainable? And looking at those figures, you know, thinking, well, would that mean we would want to do a program at one site and bus people there and have a fully staffed site? Would that mean we would want to really focus on homework? But I think that we would need the parent, well, first they would need your guys' support to know that you guys would want to continue funding at that level. And then kind of coming up with a plan of what would that look like kind of from there. So that's pretty much what I've got. If you guys have questions or Open for discussion. Yeah.
I'll offer. My daughter is in charge of the corporation that oversees AmeriCorps, so if you need any help.
Oh,
There you go,
that's
there's
awesome.
connections.
Thank you, that's great. Yeah.
And also, Autumn has done a wonderful job this year in trying to access resources that we've not accessed before, like the PSU students. That's how you sustain a program like this. You can't sustain this paying somebody $20 an hour. It just doesn't happen. And so she's been very great at finding those resources and has really moved us along. And so I think the question really comes down to is, what does the board see as the kind of the district's contribution, if there is any, towards this program, so we can start to think about sustainability.
Does the superintendent have an idea as to what those numbers might end up being?
So the question is, so right now you contribute 161,000. So is that a number that you see as, my recommendation, it would never be higher than that. But would that number be something that this board, and certainly knowing you can't commit further boards, because next year you could decide you're not contributing anything. But in theory, is that something this board would be willing to contribute, or say we're going to contribute a sustainability piece of it? So one of our conversations has been, like Autumn said, is right now these are kind of like, we pay FICA and retirement. This district, oddly for grants, like the grants pay for like the position, and then the budget pays for insurance and FICA retirement. I've always been under the impression if a grant can't pay for a position, we don't budget it, you don't have the position. So what we're looking at is what is sustainable. If the board were to say 160,000, well, we would always need a director, we would always need somebody overseeing this program. And so is that a sustainable piece that we want to keep in the budget, so that 100% of it in the budget? So we always know there's a director, and then, okay, for after that, what's another piece that we have to sustain that we can't use PSU students for or whatever, and start to work kind of backwards on that.
But where do you come up with 320,000?
Well, that's the piece that's a sustainability piece of saying, okay, what does that look like? So if the board says we're gonna continue $160,000 maximum, that's where we're at, like, we feel comfortable continuing the contribution now. We would be working to say, so first with New Hampton, if they don't get that grant, what does that look like for a New Hampton parent? Maybe it is $12 a day as opposed to the $9 a day, you know what I mean? What does that cost? Can we get volunteers in there? How do we start to maybe think, is there an outside institution who can help us continue the program by putting supports in there? That we have to think about that sustainability piece now.
Well, could I say something too? Well, and one thing too, though, I think that with looking at the 161,000, knowing, kind of from the budget, like, if we could put, for instance, all of our PSU work studies into the Newfound Area School District, and we could put in 2 staff members at each site, it may not look like the same program where students are having like as much enrichment, but it would mean that there would still be a safe place for students to be. So it could still look a little bit different. Or maybe what I would want to do is parent surveys and also student surveys to look at that. How is one of the most important pieces to parents to have a teacher in? So maybe we're looking at, well, how much does it cost? It costs around, I think around $12,000 to have a teacher for the whole year for the entire time. So if we have the 4 elementary sites and we were able to have 2 teachers, is that something that's not including FICA and retirement though? But I looked at Mike because I was like, that's not right. No, but
Not a big deal.
no, but thinking about sort of what pieces could the budget or the newfound budget kind of contribute to, so that then we're building on all of those other partnerships to supplement those programs. Busing is a huge cost. It's something that is required for the grant, but if we didn't have the grant, it's not something that we would need to necessarily have. And potentially looking at getting these AmeriCorps members in at the high school site, I think in talking to the administration that the homework club is sort of the most important piece on that end for them and for a lot of students. And so maybe it's looking at bringing in some of those really core clubs as in co-curricular, and then having as a AmeriCorps member, and then you're looking at a program cost of, you know, $10,000 for the high school versus what it costs now. Because while it is great to have the grant, there are many requirements from the grant that we need to meet, and many reporting requirements that you don't need to meet when you don't have the grant. So I think that, I guess that's kind of part of the other reason, is that if I know that you guys are willing to kind of commit that 161, and again, we wouldn't know for future boards, but then I could play around with it and kind of talk to parents, talk to families, and then kind of come up with a couple different ideas and models that might work in a sustainable system.
I'm curious about the cost of the late bus. I almost see that as being something that isn't part of Project Promise. I think that we would need a late bus anyway, having kids stay after school for different purposes. So, I mean, yeah, maybe not, but that cost, what is it?
It's, so at New Hampton, it's about $15,000 for the year per bus. So currently, it's $60,000. The district covers around, I mean, this is round numbers, so the district covers around $45,000 and the grant covers $15,000.
And I will tell you, I don't have accurate numbers, but ridership is very low.
Yeah.
Especially at Wives.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I feel like the late bus in a certain sense at the high school is like for those kids, a lot of those, I would say the majority of the high school students ride the late bus. Maybe 50% at the middle school ride the late bus. At the elementary level, it kind of drops down. And at New Hampton, they have their own bus currently this year. They may potentially not next year. And that site does, it's the only site that does door-to-door, I don't know if it is exactly door-to-door, but pretty close to door-to-door drop-offs. And they have around 10 students, but like Danbury doesn't have a late bus at all.
This is where your survey is going to help you, because you're going to, what you perceive to be a really important piece of the program, parents would be like, if you have to cut, if you can save $60,000 by getting rid of that, and I'd be fine with paying, you know, another $2, and then you have a sustainable program. That's where you're going to start to get to a feel of what are the most important elements of the program,
Right.
from the people that use it and the value they get out of it. So, and this is why this is a perfect stage for this to be happening.
Yeah, I think that's good information.
Oh, yeah.
The high school and middle school kids using that bus, maybe, you know, phase it out for the elementary schools and just have it for the high school.
And that's that whole sustainability. What is important to having the program?
Yeah.
Where do we stand with the negotiations with the state for the payroll discrepancy?
So that's actually with us, with the attorney.
Yeah, I would not bring that up in this meeting, and that's not a negotiation, and we're working with that, with legal counsel.
So I mean, that could be $150,000.
That has absolutely
No,
nothing to
it's
do
not- It's not
with this.
that close, but if
Not
you
even
wanted to
close.
have a conversation and not, public session, we'd be more than happy to share more information.
The funds that we're paying currently, that should increase next year, correct, as the New Hampton grant, well, probably any of them over the course of time, but isn't there a cost-sharing mechanism that
No,
increases?
so what we are sharing, what we pay is strictly what we pay. There's no requirement by the grant for us to pick up like 20% of it. Correct, there's no.
No, so we're, as the director of the grant, I'm supposed to work on sustainability and talking to you guys to ask, and I think it's different among different places. That said, with New Hampton site, because it will go down to around $15,000, my thought is right now we have 4 late buses, and so talking to Scott about what would it look like to do 3 late buses and do a slight, this is more of a brainstorm, it's not official, but, you know, talking to the parents of, you know, if we did a little bit earlier pickup at New Hampton, then they can come easily to the high school, middle school, and then disperse from there. It would be a long bus ride for many of those students, and I think that the numbers that rode the bus would probably drop off at New Hampton if that was the case.
Have you looked at what others are doing in a similar situation with a large geography in our case?
As far as for
For
transportation?
transportation, but for other categories as well in terms of sustainability.
So, I
For
mean, I
ideas.
think a lot of people are doing stuff with partnerships. That was sort of, when we went to the summer conference, got the idea to do the work study, to connect with UNH Cooperative Extension. I think a lot of districts don't hire teachers at all to work in their after-school program is one thing that they do. But in talking to parents at a lot of the sites, that's one of the parts that they think is most valuable. I mean, again, I haven't done an official survey, but it's something that they really like about our programs, I think. So there's various ways. I talked actually with Lisa Ash, who is was the director of the 21st Century Grant in Plymouth, and they weren't refunded. And she said that some districts, so they were in 3 different communities, and some of those communities had already kind of come up with some sustainability measures, and they were able to just kind of pick up the pieces and keep going. But she said in some of the other places it took a little bit, and it doesn't look the same. People don't get paid the same rate, but that there still is an after-school thing, component going on for the students out of the district, but it's just shaped differently. It's a little bit, maybe you're looking more for donated snacks versus getting, I think they go with like 3 different components for snack, things like that.
You looked at Laconia's program, right? Did you do a walkthrough of theirs? And
That I know Lori did. I have
Okay.
not done that with them. And I think another thing that districts do too is like partnering with Title I, which is something that we've done. So looking at kind of those partnerships as well.
Anyone else?
I would just kind of quickly add that I think overall the program has value. I think it's received very well on all levels, from the student level through the staff and the parents and the like. And, I mean, it sounds like, I think at face value, I'm certainly interested as one person in supporting it, the continuation of the program at probably some level between maybe where it can get stripped down to and still be a program and where it's at now. But I think the big thing over the next, period of time through the next budget season and maybe into the other one, as we start to realize grant funds or start to lose them, is exactly what you're talking about between focus groups and the advisory panel, and come up with what the number really is. And, to sit here and say, yeah, I support $160,000 that I don't really know what it's going to be spent toward is always tough, or to say, yeah, we're going to continue a $600,000 program. Well, quite honestly, if at the end of the day, what we need is a $600,000 program, then that's what we should be looking to sustain, So I think this was a great presentation, very good for me, and I think you're on the right path to figuring out where we need to go and how we need to get.
It's nice to see the progression where, last, I don't know, not quite this time last year, close, where everything was upside down and backwards, and everybody was like scared. I was scared of Fridays, losing my Friday afternoons. Well, you just deal with it, but the program is just really running very well, and my daughter never wants to leave. So that's something to say. And I've dealt with the Fridays, and even though I get a phone call at 2 o'clock, where's your daughter going? But I think having you on board has been incredibly progressive.
it's huge, because, you have someone who's balanced their budget, who's worked with the business office, clearly with Stacy too, for curriculum and all components of it, balanced her whole budget, sustainable through the end of the year. We have all her positions encumbered through the end of the year, so we know where she is on a monthly basis. Nothing like that's happened. She actually understands where her tuition's coming from and where it's not coming from. It's a transformation.
And it's very thorough because we each get a bill.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is something new.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling good. Well, I'm feeling much better than I was when I came in August. Like, you know, that we will have program for the entire, at the elementary level, till the last day of school. I can guarantee it, so.
The programs used to shut down because they just simply run out of money. I mean, it's crazy.
One of them has a plan.
Right.
So,
And she's also being very forward-thinking, met with the
Yeah.
elementary principals and myself to talk about what can Project Promise do to help provide some enrichment during our summer program, and had some great ideas and some brainstorming.
Amy Akel working there with extended learning opportunities, which you talked a little bit about in here too. I mean, that's really integrating with school, which is what separates this out from being a daycare program.
What would you be looking for?
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking for, what does the board need to help you kind of continue the dialogue around, I guess, how much are you willing to support to sustain the program? Because I think that's where, like, those numbers are important, so we can start to realign things to make sure that when, like, say, New Hampton in a year from now, we at least have a body in there to support the program, keep it running, and then we find the supplemental pieces when we know what it is the district's willing to support. Is it the $160,000, or is it less than that? Is it more than that if we need more to sustain it? I mean, obviously, we have some work to do to what does sustainability look like? I guess we're trying to get a feeling like, is this doable at $160,000, or is the board saying, nope, we're not supporting this at all, and you can expect zero? You know?
At the risk of suggesting that future boards may or may not support this is the future board
Yep.
for next year.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that perhaps you come back to us with a bronze, silver, and gold sponsorship requirement for us to evaluate, because it's very hard to answer that question.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Autumn's on the right track. I think she's doing a great job. I think it's a great new program. I'd like to let it ride and see what, Autumn has to say come budget time. And, when we start looking at budgeting and stuff for next year, that's when I'd like to, make that kind of decision.
So I'm hearing you say that you're not opposed to some sustainability from the district portion, but come back with more as we approach it. Because the downside is we kind of, so in order to do the budget, we can come back before the budget process with kind of that gold, silver, So here's like what we think in order to run the program would cost. Here's the $160,000 and what we think we'll get out of that and what we need to get in addition to that. And then here's like bare bones, we think we could manage, but we're not sure what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should hear the ideas of, well, if we raise tuition, we can cover this, and if we change the busing, we can cover that.
Okay.
Here's some of the,
How we would do
The
it.
results.
yeah,
One
how,
of the obligations is the increase in the expense to the district that we may want to determine a way to offset that.
Yep.
As I think what Jeff's suggesting here in mind.
What are those?
Ideas in order to consider various levels of support. But I think it was clear last year that this program has merit, should be continued, and it depends on what degree we're going to be able to support that. There's a few open questions out there.
Yep.
Like kindergarten issue, the teacher's raise, et cetera. Those are all that. But I think obviously it'd be tough to discontinue something of such benefit.
I think at a minimum, from what I heard, most of that 160,000 was for Autumn's and staff position.
Yeah, and then everybody's.
everybody's
Yeah.
like on retirement, yeah, from the large grant.
So we would probably, come budget season, reallocate those funds to sustainable pieces of the grant, like a staff position at each of the schools to kind of oversee the program, so we'll do some work.
Okay.
Come back.
We know
Yeah,
that
right,
160 is kind of, if you think about it within a tax cap, that's part of the current budget. So if you're moving forward, if you can sustain that program using, some of the techniques Autumn's talked about, then that's really what we could provide as evidence, saying, all right, what happens if we can't sustain it with this? What would you be willing to cut to make this program happen? That's the only way to really take a look at a program like this and say, how valuable is it to your shareholders? What are you willing to cut to keep it? Then you're like, oh wait, now we're actually getting a feeling of value. Like, okay, well, it's not as valuable as, let's say, kindergarten hypothetically. Or, you know, these are the kind of decisions they can make unless we could make it sustainable within the current budget. And I'm sure we can do a lot more on that.
The point I was trying to get to was that because it is viewed as continued education, that we definitely need to support Autumn's position to continue that education process.
Any further?
Thank you for your input, and I'm excited now kind of at least to have this conversation so that I can then go to families and ask, you know, do some more formal focus groups and kind of get those essential things and then be able to come back to you guys and sort of say like, hey, this is what program would look like at your current level of funding right now, and be able to at least come up with some plans.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
having, thanks for moving me up.
Okay, we'll now move on to what would be item 9 under old business.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to table the policies until the next meeting. There'll be another batch coming then, and we might as well group them together. It's light of the late hour.
Motion to table is not debatable. The motion before us to table item 9, old business policy. Okay. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 6-0. No opposed. Brings us to item 10, I'm sorry, 9B. School calendar
So
for approval.
in your packet was the school calendar as a follow-up from our last meeting. We did make the one change we discussed, which was the day before Christmas vacation as an early release day. So if there's no other changes, the board would make a motion to approve the calendar. I know people are anxiously waiting for it.
Yeah. They always are.
Yep.
We had that for consent agenda?
You know, we could do that unless we want to discuss this further. Any objection to putting it on consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll add it to the consent agenda. Okay, item 9C, field trip. We have a field trip request from Peter Kaufman.
Could you, actually, I do have an objection to putting that on the consent agenda.
Okay? In that case, we'll take it up individually. And so for that reason, if there's a motion before the floor, so we can discuss it, or do you just want to discuss it without a motion at this point?
Well, I still object to the starting before Labor Day. But I object more to having school on that Friday before Labor Day.
Comments from the superintendent?
This has gone through the union, it has gone through the teachers. They all supported on Friday. I think they viewed having 3 days before school as a good beginning as opposed to 2. I think teachers' concern is you take one more day off, that goes to the end of the year, which brings us into that 4th week of June.
Stacy, would, I guess my kind of understanding is, and I'm forgetting the language within the the contract as far as some of the other issues, but I guess kind of hypothetically, the major issue is the late Labor Day of this year, right?
Correct.
And so, in a typical, like this year, I know I should remember I voted on it, but we had the Friday before, no, we
So
started
the
after.
students
so
started
it wasn't
afterwards,
Labor Day.
yeah.
So this is that oddball, Labor Day is late.
Yeah, as it
You
fluctuates.
can't start the 8th and in July with snow days, so.
Right, if you started after Labor Day, you'd have to add 3 days onto that, which would bring you to the 22nd as your last day of
Well,
school.
Right, plus.
Yeah, plus snow days, yeah.
Plus another winter like this one or the one before, you know, so, okay.
You're being involved in Bristol, how do you feel the traffic? I think that's your
That was the big deal.
concern, that Friday. Is it that much different than other Fridays?
I guess I've never run a traffic study there per se, you
No.
know, but I don't find it to be that significantly different. I think, you know, and the concerns over the traffic, now, who knows if they were resolved or not, but I mean, that was really the purpose behind a lot of the stuff that the town has done within the square and has done within surrounding areas around the square and is going to continue to do. Again, I think this is that year, and I'm not one of those math whizzes that can tell you how many times this will affect us in the next 20 years, but, you know, for the couple of times that it will, to have that start, I don't think it's that big of an issue.
I mean, our office is downtown, and in the summer, traffic picks up, but I don't think that Friday is any better or worse than any other day. I mean, it's heavier traffic all summer. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we have kids all summer in summer program that travel and are on the road, so.
Well, I've been told it's the second biggest traffic day, coming behind the Friday of 4th of July weekend.
In the state, right? Yeah,
Well, we
it's
have one of the
considered a big
major.
traffic.
Yeah, I guess
West routes.
from safety perspective, I mean, kids ride buses, they get off the bus at the school. If they're walkers, we have a crossing guard right downtown who walks all the kids across the street. So from the safety perspective, there's no real concern as far as the traffic goes.
You have the last day of school being on the 17th, if you didn't have any school snow days,
Mhm.
you'd go back for one day.
If we didn't have any
If you
snow
did-
days.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I know you would, but a lot of schools do take that Friday off, you know, the 4 day, they go back for 2 days and have 4 days.
Was there similar opposition, i.e. minimal, to this proposed calendar?
From the teachers?
Yeah.
I had no comments on that, on going to school Friday, none. They asked for the day before Christmas as a half day, that was their only real request.
Anyone care to make a motion at this point, or would you care to discuss it further? If you make a motion, you can also discuss it.
I make a motion to accept the calendar as presented to us today.
Okay, been moved by Christine, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dawn. What is there for discussion at this point? Doesn't sound like we want to discuss this further, so all those in favor of the calendar as proposed by the superintendent signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Can that be done before public comment?
Oh,
We forgot you were here, do you have comment?
Well, no, I was asked to point that out if it was,
Thank you, Fred.
You're the only public here.
well, you know,
Mr. Caldwell may have some comments as well. I'm sorry.
He usually doesn't though. He just records.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have difficulty with this format, and it keeps, that's why I asked you, Fred, thank you. So, before we vote on this, we put it at item 13. We're gonna have to see if there is any public comment that might influence us. So, would it be okay with the mover of the motion and the seconder, Christine and Dawn, to delay this vote we just took until after public comment?
I want to hear, yes, I would like to hear
Okay.
public comment.
So then, that vote will not get recorded yet. Is there an objection to that? Okay, my apologies, I have difficulty with the format. Again, thank you, Fred. Okay. Now, we're at item 9C, which is the field trip.
So you have a request for the, from Pete Cochran to have the student athletes attend the 23rd Annual New Hampshire Athletic Directors Leadership Conference. They've done it for the last, he notes here, 14 years. It's in Concord, it's an overnight. It's something we've done every year. It's a great conference for our students.
Sue?
I did have a comment. 8 students, okay, it's not a real large amount, but I would like to see one more chaperone. It's always good to have 2,
Were you
just in
volunteering?
case something would happen.
So, I mean, it's the, yeah, it's typically the, I mean, in most schools, it's typically the athletic director. It is a student, it is within our realm, our appropriate student.
What students are going, like?
They would be our
Boss or-
athlete or athletics, our athlete leaders.
Oh, so you're
So-
really,
Co-catch.
Yeah, they're your really good kids, I mean.
So if anything happened to
yeah.
the chaperone, they would know what to do.
Yeah, and there's tons of adults there. This is not a conference that is just
Mhm.
kids, I mean.
It's
there's-
an overnight, yeah.
Have they always had one chaperone?
I would have to look. My gut is